everyone. I'm Betsy and this is Philippa. We're the founders of Blue Blaze. Today, we're going to talk about how to use extracurriculars to build a stellar high school resume. We are also going to give you a few tips and strategies that will help you hopefully stand out from the crowd. Blue Blaze is an extracurricular advisory service that we built in order to help out our own kids. They found that it was tough as they were looking for activities to do outside their school to find things that had a wow factor and that aligned with their interests. So we built this database to fill that gap.
A recorded version of this webinar will be sent to you in a link in an email that you'll get after the end of the webinar. But also stay on until the end because you will get unique access to a coupon that will give you a full 3 months access to the database, which hopefully will be really useful. So let's get started.
Okay, 3 steps to a standout high school resume. There's a secret that private college admissions consultants tell their clients. These days, it's not enough to be excellent. Your high school resume really needs to look different from everyone else's. Now more than ever, you have to be unique and different. High school is a great time for exploration and intellectual expansion, but if you're planning to apply to highly selective colleges, it's also important to be thoughtful and strategic about developing your most compelling and outstanding profile for the ultra competitive college admissions process. You've probably heard college applications increased by 20 to 40% at some schools, even more at many of the top colleges this year. And applicants are applying to more colleges than ever. Even 10 years ago, the average ambitious teen applied to 8, maybe 10 colleges. Today, kids often apply to 15 to 20 colleges or more. You got to keep in mind that you're competing directly with your classmates and also with applicants from your region. And everyone applying to top colleges has great grades. Most of them have top board scores. On paper, ambitious high school students tend to look really similar. And if there are 8, 15, or even 40 kids from your high school applying to a particular school, and this happens all the time, it's really hard to distinguish yourself. So how do you stand out? In this landscape, great grades and board scores are just table stakes. So you got to find another way to do it. How do you do it? Extracurriculars. But not just any extracurriculars. Your profile needs to include extracurriculars that are original and different from what your peers are doing. In particular, your extracurriculars need to be original. School-based activities are great and it's important to be engaged at your school. In fact, it's really important, but alone, usually not enough. You need interests that are highly original and different and that no one else in your school is going to have done. In other words, not just one of the typical sports, clubs, community service activities that you find at most schools in America. Next, your extracurriculars really should be memorable. At least 1 or 2's got to have a wow factor, something that jumps out when you talk about it with people and that also sticks in the mind of a college admissions officer in a good way. Impactful. At least one of your activities should have made a real impact on your school or local community. And we're going to come back and talk more about this later. Finally, thematically linked. Ideally, there should be an overarching theme linking your extracurriculars that you can sum up in a few words and that's going to allow you to clearly articulate the connection in a narrative arc when you're applying to college. Once again, we're going to talk more about this later. Remember, your objective is to stand out from all of the other people in the pile. So how do you actually put this into practice? Well, the best thing to do first is to find your theme. Take a good look at yourself. What do you enjoy doing? What are you good at? Using that, find a theme that speaks to you. It could be politics, arts, robotics, journalism, sports, really anything, as long as it's authentic to you. You should, of course, in the course of your high school career, do tons of different things, but For the purposes of college admissions, it's going to be more powerful if you can narrow in on a single theme where you can really show curiosity, genuine interest, and that you've had the maturity to stick with it. This is going to be the focus of your narrative arc and how you tell your story when you apply to college. Don't worry too much about your theme. It's not like you're picking a major or a career. This is just something that sparks an interest in you now. And by the way, if you don't have one interest, it's fine. Finding an intersection between two different interests can actually be more impressive and often more unique. Once you've identified your theme, you really need to pick activities that are different from everyone else's. Student government, Model UN, school clubs, sports, they're great, but they're not original enough in and of themselves. The majority of kids applying to competitive colleges are going to have really robust school based extracurriculars like this. And most of them don't realize how similar this makes them look to everyone else. Find something that's unique to you. Usually, it's easier to do this if you look outside of school organizations. Try to include one or more activities with a real wow factor. Again, this is something that's going to be memorable to someone reading your college application. Remember, you don't have time to do everything. So it's a really good idea to ditch some of the tick the box activities. These are things that you're doing just because you think you're supposed to, or maybe you started doing them in ninth grade and don't really know how to give them up, but you're not really genuinely interested in them. To underscore, we're not suggesting that you should not participate in school-based activities. It's really important to be involved at your school. And in fact, this is going to be something that your college admissions officer is probably going to look at. But run-of-the-mill school-sponsored activities usually are not going to be enough to make you stand out from your peers. At least one of your activities should show how you've impacted and enriched your community. It's important here to distinguish between regular community service, like think volunteering in a soup kitchen, and community impact projects. A community impact project is a project that positively impacts your school or local community, and this is the kicker, is authentically teen led. Anything that's organized by an adult or part of a pre-existing course is not going to be as meaningful. When you're thinking about what your community impact project could be, think of something in your community that could use changing. For example, this could involve beautification of a vacant lot, a public art project, maybe a school speaker series on a topic of interest to you and your peers. It really doesn't have to be elaborate or expensive. As a rule of thumb, self-directed community projects are going to be principally or wholly led, realistically achievable, and locally based. Remember, college admissions is not really about what you've done, it's about what you're going to do when you get to campus. A self directed community project is the perfect way to showcase your potential in the ultra competitive college admissions game. So, Philippa, where do you go to find these types of original, memorable, and impactful activities?
Thanks, Betsy. It's really hard to know even where to start. And actually, this is where our database comes in. Blueberry's database is an extracurricular search tool with hundreds of incredible, interesting, and different activities you've probably never heard of. You can do several things with the database. You can discover new and original activities. You can narrow in on your theme. You can expand your narrative arc, and you can find out how you can make an impact on your community. As you will see, this is just the top page of it. It's searchable by area of interest, like the environment, or government and debate, or art, sports, etc. So let's click on an area that might be of interest to you. Let's, for example, I don't know, let's click on science. So if you click on science, all the entries in this database become sorted according to science topics. And as you'll see when you kind of click through the enormous number of entries we have under science, some of them relate to biology, some of them relate to chemistry, physics, engineering, and many, many more. Now you can either just search science randomly and look across the whole database. And as you see, there's tons and tons of entries. And on each page, you can click older and see literally hundreds and hundreds of entries across the science area. But not only that, as you'll see under science, each of the entries has a little subheading which tells you what type of activity it is. And we have 5 different types of activities under science. In fact, 5 different types of activities under each of those previous subjects, like math and engineering, and computer and robotics. And the different types of activities are broken out by competition, by what we call unique extracurriculars, which is short, little, quick extracurriculars that you can do. They're sorted by summer program and by self-directed projects and competitions. And self-directed projects are projects that you embark on yourself, you organize, you run without any parental intervention, and it's not an organized course, etc. We'll come back to those in a minute. So let's say you're looking at this science and you're attracted to environmental sustainability, for example. You might be attracted by this entry here, which is called the Biomimicry Design Challenge. It's a competition and you think, oh, that sounds great, really interesting to me. And so you click on it and you will see a description of the Biomimicry Design Challenge. Now, this happens to be an international design competition that challenges students to come up with basically a nature-inspired design solution to some sort of climate change problem that differs from year to year. And so there's a top-level description of what the competition is here, a link to how to get started, a quick estimate of the amount of time that this, entering this competition will take. This is relatively time-intensive. And then, interestingly, as you scroll down through the description, it gives links to other activities in the database that are along the same narrative arc. And so you see how you can basically develop your theme further. So let's say you've done the Biomimicry Design Challenge. You might also be interested in a summer program called Sustainable Summer Brooklyn. Or you might be interested in a self-directed project like Mulchfest, or a quick citizen science project called the Big Microplastic Survey. By clicking on these links, they will take you to other entries within our database. And thus you can really start to do what we had said was really important, which is kind of develop your theme further, create a narrative arc, and allow your curiosity to lead you from one activity to the other. And one thing that's really important, just to quickly note, is it is important to have a variety of activities in your resume. So not just competitions or not just publications, for example, but having a variety of things along the same theme or narrative arc, is an incredibly powerful way to show your curiosity and interest in a subject. So let's go back to the higher level of science for a second. So you've delved in, you've found your competitions, you've found your publications, etc. But I wanted to draw your attention really specifically to one category of activities within science. And again, this category is available within each of these different subject areas. And that was to the self-directed project. I alluded to it before. Basically, it's a project that's run by you, organized and run by you. It's self-directed. It's not helped by your parents or a teacher. It's not a pre-existing course. And usually these projects are something that have an impact on your community. And as we mentioned previously, having an impact on your community is one way to really put the icing on the cake on a fantastic resume, because it really shows what impact you've made and the type of impact that you're going to make on the college campus and beyond. So in this particular case, let's say you're interested in surfing and science and the environment. This might grab your attention. There's a great little self-directed project called Surfing Scientist. Clicked on the wrong thing. Surfing Scientist, and this, if you click on the entry, it takes you to a description in this particular case, which is basically an electronic fin that you attach to the surfboard, which tracks metrics of ocean health like currents and temperature, etc. And again, you can look at this and see how you can participate in this, rally people to get involved, etc. And launch basically what's called a surf rider campaign in your local community, obviously more relevant to those who live by the ocean. But again, just like the other entries, it tells you how to get started, it tells you some sort of time impact, and more importantly, though, for these self-directed projects, because sometimes it can feel a little bit like you know, you're interested, you're not quite sure where to start. We've actually created a PDF for every different type of project, which gives you specific tips on how to get started, how to carry out your project most efficiently, etc. So it's really a how-to step-by-step process. You have to own the process and do it yourself, but we don't leave you just flailing in the wind. We give you some really concrete and easy step-by-step ways to accomplish the project. So now I'm going to click out of this database, and Betsy is going to talk more specifically about how actual teams have used this tool. Thank you. So, teams have Blue Blaze database.
So what does this look like in a real student? We're going to walk you through the profile of one of our users, Matt, whom we happen to know personally, and show you how, with a few smart extracurriculars, he was able to transform his resume from good to great. Matt was a junior and he was an excellent student, good SAT score already under his belt. He did student government, he did sports. He was working really hard and doing everything right. But he had the same extracurriculars as lots of other kids in his school. In addition, his activities didn't demonstrate a deep interest in any particular theme outside of school clubs. First, Matt took our suggestion to find his theme. He was interested in the environment, but he was also really good at art and he enjoyed doing it. He was in Model UN, but although all the other top students at his school did Model UN, he really didn't feel passionate about it and it took up a lot of time. So he decided to quit Model UN and join the art club, where he became a really active participant. Next, he followed our advice to look beyond school clubs, and using our database, he discovered some really interesting activities and narrowed in on the more specific environmental issue of clean water. He first entered the Living Oceans art competition, which raises awareness of water issues in the environment. He had a lot of fun doing it, although he didn't win. He ultimately was a finalist. And then using the narrative art component in the database, he went on to find other activities relating to the issue of clean water. He landed on Crowd the Tap, which is a citizen science project. He rallied a few friends to join Crowd the Tap, which is a water quality survey. And even though it only took a couple hours, it added a really interesting layer to his profile. His combined interest in art and the environment finally led him to launch an amazing local community impact project in which he, with the help of his art department at his school, ran a storm drain art competition, the winners of which were permitted to paint their designs on a local storm drain to draw attention to the issue of storm water runoff. None of these things were extremely time consuming or difficult to execute, but when you consider them together, they made Matt unique and different, and they really helped him stand out. They also showcased his curiosity, his leadership, and how he was potentially going to enrich his college community. And all of those are really important things. So don't freak out if you feel like you don't have time to fit this in. We know how tough high school is for teenagers and how hard they're already working. So we wanted to point out that there are some time-saving strategies that you can use that'll help you build a more impressive profile without actually doing all that much more than what you're already doing in your schedule. So here are a couple tips. First, include some activities that don't take a lot of time. Think about Crowd the Tap, the water quality survey that Matt did. Our database includes a ton of these quick activities that can be a really great way to either explore a new interest or to deepen an existing one. Think citizen science projects, crowdsource projects, short courses. There are a lot of great examples. And here's one, astroecology. Project volunteers help identify endangered species using thermal drone imagery. You can spend as much or as little time as you want helping out. This would be a great little addition for someone with an interest in ecology and conservation. It's not going to make all the difference in your college applications, but it's a flesh out and dimension adder. Another tip is to use to repurpose content that relates to your theme. Awards, competitions, and publications are great complements to your college applications, but you don't necessarily need to create entries specifically for them. Instead, use what you already have. For example, if writing's in your narrative arc, think about essays that you might have or creative writing pieces that you've already written in school, and then submit them to some of the many publications and competitions. This can easily be done with art portfolios, articles that you've written for your school newspaper, history papers. There are lots of examples. Also, look forward. If you've already decided on your theme, you can plan ahead to maximize your efforts. Before you get started with a project or piece of work, pick a topic or format that can be repurposed or spun off in multiple directions and keep building on that narrative arc. For example, if you have to pick a topic for your creative writing class in school, first look at the New York Times, which runs a ton of writing competitions for high schoolers, and see if there are topics that you could use to enter your creative writing project. Write your paper and then submit it to the competition. Just to recap, today it's harder than ever to distinguish yourself in the ultra competitive college admissions process, especially if you're just trying to do it through grades, test scores, and what everybody else is already doing at school. Extracurriculars are one of the best ways to stand out in the college admissions process. What are the characteristics of extracurriculars that take a candidate from good to great? Having a selection of activities and interests that are thematically linked, and at least some of which are original, memorable, and impactful. These extracurriculars don't necessarily need to be time consuming, but they should be authentic and engaging. Optimally, teens should start thinking about these issues in freshman and sophomore year, but don't worry if you're further along in your high school career. It's almost never too late to get started. And remember, the good news is these are all things you should be doing anyway as you discover who you are, find out what matters to you, and explore what you can bring to the world in college and beyond.
Thank you, Betsy. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. And if you want to know more, we can help. Go to the Blue Blaze website, which we'll send you a link in an email after this webinar, and sign up. All of our subscriptions have actually a 14-day free trial, so there's no risk. But on top of which, as a thank you for watching this webinar, here is the coupon code for a whole free month of access to the database. So really, it's a no-brainer. And if you're still kind of wondering how to put it all together, what direction to go to, you've looked at the database, you're interested in so many things, you're trying to like focus in on the right things for you and kind of work on what your narrative arc should be. We do take a very small number of private consulting clients, and there's an application form on the website, and you can always apply and see if we still have availability for that. We hope this was useful to you. Building your standout high school resume really doesn't have to be hard, and we are here to help you if you need it. Thank you so much, and goodbye from us. Thank you.